Green. Mr. Lyda. Dr. Middlebrooks.
Here.
Mr. Murphy.
Here.
Mr. Posey.
Here.
Mr. Shaw.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here. If Ms. Hanley would take care of the invocation and Mr. Posey the pledge.
Let us pray. Lord, we give you honor and praise. You are the source of all that is good, the source of all of our blessings. Thank you for every gift we've been given. We are grateful for the freedom to gather together, and we ask for your blessings on this meeting. We ask your guidance and direction upon the leaders here tonight as they make decisions that affect the people of this city. We place in your care those who are traveling this summer, that they may return home safely. In your name we pray. Amen.
Salute and pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to start off the report section by saying that we're not going to have food tonight. You missed it last meeting, but then you also missed 3.5 hours worth of conversation. We're going to start off in the report section. We have Philip Bayhackle, candidate circuit judge, Shelby County. Are you here?
Yes, sir.
Come down and give us about 3 seconds. We give you a little bit longer.
Well, thank you. See, I had the advantage of watching some of the videos for prior meetings. So I remember you said there's only, what, 10 people or 10,000 people that watch these? Something like that.
Something to 60,000.
Somewhere, oh, that's good.
One person watching.
My name is Philip Bayhackle. I'm running for Shelby County Circuit Judgeship that is set to be voted on tomorrow morning, and all day tomorrow. Running for office is like applying for a job. You really never know what's going to happen until the end of the day. And when you apply for this job, people say you're supposed to do certain things to let the individuals know what your qualifications are. Well, you could already tell I'm old, so I've been practicing for quite a while. I started practicing in 1981. I served 6 years on the bench as a judge in Jefferson County, and 4 or 5 years ago I moved to Shelby County, and Judge Conn was retiring, so I'm running for his position. When I served as a judge before, I brought to the bench strong work ethics, which means I believe that if I was elected, which I was, by the citizens of Jefferson County, that I needed to give you a fair representation of what a judge is supposed to do. So I went to work at 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning. Docket started at 9. I was there till 5 or 6. Didn't have much of a life because at that time, and still, I was divorced and I was raising 2 children that I had custody of, one with special needs, and they were with their mother on weekends. So weekends I didn't have anything to do, so I went to work at the courthouse, reviewed files, and prepared for the next week. Well, it stands now that as an attorney practicing law, I still work all the time. My office is right across the street from Walmart in Pelham, right down the road from your other facility, and I'm there on nights and weekends working too. So I'm asking for you to vote for me as your circuit judge in Shelby County, because I want to bring that work ethic and the belief of following the law and doing what's right for our citizens to the bench. I'm proud to say that I managed my docket to the point where I didn't have people complaining about not having their case heard. I managed my docket to the point where I brought out entered rulings quickly so that the individuals knew what was going on. All right? We demand a certain quality from judges. If you elect me as your judge in Shelby County, for those of you that don't live in Shelby County, you probably know someone, you'll get a hard work, strong work ethics. You'll get someone that's proven to follow the law and do what's right. I guess that's about it.
Thank you, sir. Good luck.
Thank you.
This other gentleman, is it cousins or what?
First cousin.
First cousin. We have a last minute I'm going to throw in just because alphabetical order. John Bayhackle, running for Supreme Court, place 4. How are you, sir?
Doing great. It's good to be here, Mayor, Council. I am John Bayhackle, and I'm a candidate for Alabama Supreme Court, place 4. This year, you get a chance to vote on 5 of the Supreme Court candidates. There are 9 Supreme Court justices, 5 of them are running this time. The Chief Justice and 4 Associate Justices. Justice Maine in place 4, which I'm running for, is not running again. He has aged out. So when you think about this Supreme Court, we have an opportunity to change 5 of the members. However, place 2 and 3 are not running again. Think about experience, integrity, dedication, and fairness. Because the judges that you want to have a level playing field, somebody with a broad background, somebody that has had an opportunity to see many of the events that you might bring in front of the court. I've been practicing 35 years, a year less than my cousin Philip. I have sat as a judge pro tem, do arbitrations for the Postal Service, for USA Track and Field across the nation, Letter Carriers Union. And I also get to be a hearing officer for the Board of Dental Examiners, who's just off John Hawkins Parkway. I'm in private practice with my dad and my sister. You've heard the name before. My brother was a circuit judge, my sister was a circuit judge, and my cousin Philip was a district judge here in town. Married for 33 years. I have 2 children. I asked both my children if they want to be lawyers. They said no. One's a travel agent, travels around the world. The other one said, Dad, I want to be a doctor. He's a doctor and will be. I asked for your vote tomorrow for place 4. And one way to remember Bayhackle's running for place 4 is think about the last time you watched a football game. At the end of the 3rd quarter, all of those players were raising up their hand 4-4-4. They were trying to remind you in advance. So John Bayhackle, place 4 for Alabama Supreme Court.
I thought you were going to say everybody's going to have a chance to vote for 5 Bayhackles. Is there still any Bayhackles in law enforcement? Y'all retired out of it?
My younger brother was the one in law enforcement, and he's working in our office.
Okay, very good. Next we have Donna Baloo, candidate for Court of Criminal Appeals, place 3.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I am Donna Baloo, and I'm running for the Court of Criminal Appeals, place 3. That's an open seat being vacated by Judge Michael Joyner from Shelby County, which is where I live and practice, and he is retiring. I've been a practicing attorney in Alabama state and federal courts for over 20 years. I've been in the legal field for 30, but practicing for over 20 years. I've done criminal cases, civil cases, jury trials, non-jury trials, but most importantly, during these 20 years, I've been doing appeals. Not all attorneys do appeals, and I do appeals for my own clients as well as for other attorneys. The Court of Criminal Appeals reviews decisions and rulings from our city and county criminal courts. As an appeal judge, I will not be trying cases or making split-second decisions. I will be doing what I've done for 20 years, researching and writing, finding mistakes made in our trial courts. It's hard work, and it involves me sometimes sitting for hours, sometimes days, reviewing hundreds, sometimes thousands of pages of documents, evidence, testimony, and writing persuasive legal arguments to our appeals courts. It takes a keen eye and an understanding of the law and how to apply it. One word, one comma, can make the difference in a case. A little bit about me personally, I've been married for over 30 years. I have a 24-year-old son who is a cardiac intensive care nurse down in Shelby Medical Center. I'm a summa cum laude graduate from the University of Alabama with a degree, at Birmingham, with a degree in English and history. I'm a graduate of Cumberland School of Law at Samford University, where I was honored for research and writing. The preamble to our Constitution, one of the tenets, is to establish justice. I consider that a duty. I've litigated my own personal free speech case that went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. I've litigated in defense of the Second Amendment, and I have defended the Constitution. I've also done letters, phone calls, litigation if necessary, against rules and regulations that I felt were harmful to our citizens. I can promise you to fulfill my duty to follow the law, not make law. I'm a strict constitutionalist, a conservative, and a patriot, and those are not words to me. That is who I am. And I would appreciate your consideration tomorrow. I humbly ask for your vote. Donna Ballou, Court of Criminal Appeals, Place 3. I wish it was Place 2 because that would rhyme. Ballou, Place 2, but it doesn't. It is Place 3. So, thank you very much.
Thank you and good luck. Mr. Posing, I believe you have another appointment to the Arts Council.
Yes, sir. I would like to appoint Ms. Pamela Sale to the final spot on the Hoover Arts Council, which will be a, I believe, 6-year term.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item number 6, Resolution 5815-18, Mr. Ford.
This resolution amends the budget for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2018, as set forth on the exhibit attached to the resolution.
Move for approval, resolution 5815-18.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I guess I've got one question I'd asked during the conversation earlier, Dr. Lopez. The first 2 years of this is a zero interest loan. Yeah, we'll come back to that. Small procedure. Got me to lose my train of thought. That's all right. Zero interest on the loan for radio equipment. We paid the first 2 years in installments, and now we're gonna pick up years 3 through 5. I was wondering, why are we doing that as capital rather than an operating cost for the next following years?
Sure. Actually, I want to make clear too, the 3 through 5, we're going ahead and budgeting it. We will still continue to pay that over 3 years. I think when this was first requested, it was put actually on a capital form. And originally, I think that was because it was a capital project. And in the middle of that capital project, we switched over to the no interest loan. And so we kept it in that same funding source.
Very good. Any questions for Dr. Lopez?
And in full disclosure, I just want to make sure that it's clear that item number 4 on your Exhibit A, we did change some of the details, but the total amount did not change.
Having to do with part-time.
That's
Okay.
right.
Any questions for Dr. Lopez? Anything from the audience? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We're going to back up just a moment and ask for approval of the minutes for May 7th, May 21st, regular meetings, and the 17th and 31st work sessions.
Move for approval without reading.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Getting back to item 7, we're going to conduct a public hearing on the abatement of public nuisance due to weeds and/or grass, those that may gather within. Robert, do you want to identify the properties and then the public hearing? I guess we don't need to get the resolution quite yet. Okay. You want to let Mr. Corley go ahead?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Corley, please.
Resolution number 581618 declares the following properties as public nuisances due to weeds and/or grass thereon and orders the abatement thereof. 1536 Holly Road, 3256 Mockingbird Lane, 542 O'Neill Drive, 2272 Vanessa Drive, 2335 Deerwood Road, 2061 Crosscrest Drive, and 400 Shadeswood Circle.
Mr. Mack.
Yes, sir.
Pictures you provided are all these from today.
These were all taken after lunch today.
Right. These also include pictures from the next properties, or
Yes, sir.
strictly for.
Yeah, the separate one is for the ones that go on at the first hearing.
Very good, very good. Any questions for Mr. Mack? This is a public hearing. Anybody from the public, any of the residents care to speak? Understand anything from the council?
approve resolution 5816.
Second.
Motion is second. Once again, any comments or questions from the council or the public? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item number 8, resolution 5817-18, Mr. Corley.
This resolution declares the following properties as public nuisances due to weeds and or grass that own or to be vacant thereof as provided under Alabama law. 1003 Alford Avenue and 1017 Bridgewater Park Drive.
Move for approval of resolution 581718.
Second.
Have a motion second. Robert, can you explain what we're accomplishing through this resolution?
Yes, sir. This is the first hearing on those two properties. That's just declaring them a public nuisance, and we'll have the second hearing, for abatement.
Hopefully we'll get some corrective actions. Any comments or questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 5818-18, Mr. Corley.
This resolution approves the Title VI program set forth in Exhibit A required for city adoption. In order to comply with the Title VI federal requirements, this resolution also designates the manager of the Hoover Senior Center to serve as the Title VI officer and gives the manager the authority to revise and update the plan as necessary.
Move for approval of resolution 5818.
Second.
Motion and second. Ms. Stewart, do you have anything you'd like to allow? This housekeeping. Got an email today saying that I'm on the safety committee. So, do I need to come to that? No. I think it was meant for Gene Powell. Mr. Powell, you can stand in. Any comments or questions from the council? Ms. Stewart, your staff. Anything from the audience? This is really keeping up to date the required documents with the federal government. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 5819-18, Mr. Corley.
This resolution authorizes Mayor Frank V. Mercado to execute administrative services agreements with Discovery Benefits Inc. to continue servicing the retiree health reimbursement accounts.
Move to approve resolution 5819.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? Mr. Lewis, this is strictly housekeeping in nature, as you identified Thursday.
Yes, sir, just a new agreement with the same company.
Very good. Any questions from the audience? Once again, the council. Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Resolution 5820-18, Mr. Corley.
This resolution authorizes Mayor Frank V. Mercado or his designee to execute an Apple developer account, an Apple iTunes Connect account, and a Google developer account as required by C-Click-Fix in order to establish a dedicated app for My Hoover Connect.
Move to approve resolution 582018.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Moose, could you come down for just a second, because this will give you an opportunity to toot your own horn in the mayor's work and staff's work on getting this My Hoover Connect app going. And, tell us why we're needing to open these accounts. About 12 seconds.
12 seconds, okay. The C-Click-Fix and My Hoover Connect is a citizens engagement app that allows the citizens to report potholes, trash pickup, things like that. Obviously, most of the time you notice those things when you're out and about, so a mobile application makes the most sense to do that with. To deploy that app, it has labeled as a Hoover app, as opposed to a generic C-Click-Fix app that multiple cities would use. It requires us to have those accounts with Apple and Android.
Any questions for Mr. Moose?
Yes, sir, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
When might we see this come online?
So we've actually, believe soft release is the 15th, or somewhere around the 15th of this month, and by soft release, we'll actually go live with it. We'll start really pushing it hard to the public at the end of the month. We actually started staff training today with the application. The mobile app, as we're just now at this point with the resolution, may be a little bit behind that, but the web page will be available at that time.
Great, thank you.
Anything else from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes ayes have it. Resolution 58-2118, Mr. Corley.
This resolution authorizes Mayor Frank V. Burkett to execute the necessary documents related to a memorandum of agreement between Alabama law enforcement agency and the city of Hoover regarding the disbursement of funds for the high-intensity drug trafficking area program.
Move to approve resolution 58-2118.
Second.
Motion and a second. Chief, this is basically funding for overtime for certain patrol units.
Yes, that's correct. It's a continuation of something we did last summer.
How much would you anticipate bringing this year?
About 54,000.
54? Excellent. Thank you, sir. Any other questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next, we have a second reading of ordinance 18-2374. Mr. Corley.
This ordinance rearranges, alters, and extends the city's corporate limits to include property owned by the Brook Highland Community Church, as shown on the map attached to the ordinance. This is phase 5 of a multi-stage annexation.
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of ordinance number 18-2374.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Minus?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Second reading of ordinance 18-2375, Mr. Corley.
This ordinance rearranges, alters, and extends the city's corporate limits to include 2 lots located at 1863 and 1865 Buttercup Drive, owned by Blake Baxter, as shown on the map attached to the ordinance.
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of ordinance number 18-2375.
A motion and second. Any comments or questions from the council? Any from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Minus?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next is the second reading of ordinance 18-2378. Mr. Corley.
This ordinance amends the city's municipal code to add regulations for small cell facilities within the city.
Mr. President, I move for adoption of ordinance 18-2378.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from the council?
Yes, sir, Mr. President.
Dr. Middlebrooks.
Councilman Shaw, someone reached out to me with a picture of a small cell tower, looked like a pine tree. I told him that I would inquire about the aesthetics involved in this ordinance. Can you go over that, please?
I'm not aware of a small cell being decorated as a pine tree. Those are typically reserved from my experience because of the industry design. Rod, could you comment a little bit on the aesthetic, or Mr. White, is Mr. White here, or the other Rod Long? Yeah, just what would the procedure in this ordinance be for how aesthetics are treated in the review process?
As I understand your question, you're talking about the things that are mounted to the pole that makes it look like a pine tree from afar.
Right.
Well, the ordinance is designed for ordered application. So that means that when a person does apply for a small cell facility, which includes the node as well as the support structure, that they will look at the design and aesthetics of that when it is actually attached to the pole. So there are provisions within the ordinance that are in place to make sure that your concern is actually.
Thank you.
Anything else from the council?
Yes, Mr. President, comment to Mr. Long. Your staff, engineering staff, you okay with this ordinance?
Anything else? Anything from the audience? Seeing and hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Minus?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Posey?
Aye.
Mr. Shaw?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye, the ordinance is adopted. Next, we're going to have a first reading of ordinance 18-2385. Mr. Corley.
This ordinance amends the previously adopted municipal code on small cell facilities, ordinance number 18-2378, and allows for revision to the annual license fee as well as other minor adjustments.
Mr. Evans, you want talk about the adjustments that this action will take. The second reading and consideration for adoption will be June 18th.
Yes, the adjustments that are listed in the ordinance relate to the annual license fee. There was a request for this to be changed to apply only to per node, and that is listed as the first amendment. The second amendment is to address the application, the expedited application process. There was a request to remove that process from the ordinance itself. That includes the fee associated with it, as well as the ability to have that done in 30 days or less. My understanding, believe that the applications coming forth, that they can be processed within the requisite time, as well as there is an escalation provision that is also listed in the ordinance that has an automatic 3% increase of all the fees in the ordinance. And instead of utilizing that, that provision will be removed, and the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, will be utilized to account for that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Shaw, is this your understanding of the changes?
Yes, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Evans, for a lot of work on all these different provisions, a lot of back and forth. Thank you to the industry for extensive involvement through this process, a lot of public comment. Mr. Singer emailed me a list of things, and we're going to get the answers to those today. But yes, this is exactly what we talked about in the prior meeting, possible amendments. So this is the suite that was discussed last time.
Very good. Any other questions from the council? Any questions from the audience? Welcome back.
Good evening. I'm Andy Rotenstrike, here on behalf of Verizon Wireless. My address is 420 20th Street North in Birmingham. We have with us also Mr. Tom Alexander from AT&T is here, and Ms. Kimberly Adams from Crown Castle, also from the industry, is here. First of all, let me echo, Mr. Shaw, what you said. I think we worked very well to get to this point. I appreciate the help of Mr. Corbett, Mr. Evans, and Mr. Shaw in getting us where we are. We're really down to these last two issues that we talked about in the work session. The first issue is the annual fee of $500 applying to every antenna we put inside the right-of-way, whether it's on an existing pole or whether we put a new pole in the right-of-way. We're asking that annual fee of $500 only apply if we set a new pole in the right-of-way. If we only put an antenna on top of an existing utility pole, we're not doing much harm or using much use of the right-of-way. By only applying this if we put a new pole, we would be in Hoover doing what we're doing in other jurisdictions around here, namely Mountain Brook, Trustful, and Homewood, and Montgomery. So we're asking to be on a level playing field with these other jurisdictions. Also, by changing the wording to apply to every node that goes into the right-of-way, we believe we're actually discouraging co-location. The ordinance wants to encourage us to put our antennas on existing poles, but by charging us a fee, the same fee to put a node in there as we would to put a pole, we would rather have a pole, but we are co-locating where we can so that we can be less intrusive upon the right-of-way. But the incentive for us to co-locate is no longer there if we apply this $500 to every node that goes into the right-of-way.
That's one question. Real
Yes,
quick.
sir.
Rod, did, in the amended ordinance, does it not do away with the price per pole per year in strictly nodes?
Strictly node, yes.
So there are no structure fees.
That's right, but a new node will go on either an existing structure, which
Right.
we'd like no fee for. But if we put a new pole and put the node on there, we're fine paying for that.
Mr. Wyatt, what kind of responsibilities do you and your staff have on an annualized basis?
So based on the way the ordinance, the way I read it right now, we would have to follow up and make sure that it's still in compliance with the ordinance.
There is a cost to the city to do that.
Yes.
So to address that issue of how much the city will be out, the city does get an application fee for every node that goes in the right-of-way of $200. Also, for us to get the permit issued to us, there's a $100 fee for every node themselves don't have an impact on the right of way. If we're putting an antenna on top of an existing pole, we would argue that there is no real issue or any issue the city would need to review. A new pole, possibly, you know, as the pole is still got good support around it. Those are the things we're fine with, and that's why we're agreeing that our support structure would be fine for the annual fee. Just putting an antenna on top of an existing pole does not require any additional work every year.
Not according to staff.
What would that work be, do we know?
Wyatt?
We have to go
Pass him the microphone, please.
Not only is it for inspections, but zoning compliance and engineering compliance, to make sure that the steel stable. There is some language in here about stealth technology, make sure that it's compatible with the neighborhood, and make sure if there's any kind of maintenance issues. We're supposed to review it annually, so we would have to send staff by there, both building inspection and engineering staff.
Well, again, the camouflaging we would do at the beginning. We cannot touch that note again without applying for another permit. So if we're gonna change anything from what we did the first time, we have to come back to the city, pay those 2 fees I mentioned again.
We appreciate your intense thought pattern.
The other issue that was brought up in the work session was trying to get this in line, instead of looking at local jurisdictions and what they're charging, there was some comment about looking at what other states charge, which was a fair argument. Some states do charge an annual fee per node. However, those fees are as little as $50, 1/10 of what Hoover is looking to charge. The highest is Texas at $250, which is half of what Hoover's charging. So if you decide that you need to leave it per node, which we would discourage, please get reasonable on the cost and in line with the other states that we're mentioning. The second issue, besides annual fee, gets to the factors that were being looked at with regard to when a new structure and node goes into place. Those factors were gathered from ordinances that deal mainly with with big cell towers, like the tower I believe you were probably asking about earlier. Those aesthetics and those factors should apply when a new pole is put in. But when a new antenna is placed on an existing pole, the aesthetics are really already there. Replacing an antenna that's roughly 18 inches high on top of the existing utility pole. We would suggest that these factors need not apply when just putting a new antenna on an existing pole. Those are the 2 issues that we felt like would make this ordinance work for the industry, therefore would encourage us to deploy in Hoover like we are in other places. And if we could get those worked out, I think.
President, very quickly, on that's the 6K section, yeah. I think Mr. Evans talked about that, and I think there was some discussion of the city. That seems like a reasonable request. It's just we need to hash out all the particular nuances of that entire section. And it seems reasonable, but we need to make sure that's not, causing unintended consequences and in the timeframes from the last.
Would you guys be willing to go ahead and make the change now since we're at the first reading? And if we find that's not working, we certainly can bring it back. So we're trying to get moving on the point.
Mr. President, I have a question about that, Jim, it's probably for you. How would an antenna impact the structure in your opinion and from your office?
Well, based on this, basically new technology, we're learning on the curve with this also, but we understand the way the ordinance is currently written. We're required to go by and inspect annually. Doing inspections and engineering.
So when it is added to an existing structure, does that change the existing structure in a way where this would need to be left in, or would it need to come out, or can you determine that now?
For right now, that's yet to be determined. I really don't know. I don't know how many's going in, whether we're gonna have 10 a week or 50 or 1 a month. I don't know. I hadn't shared with the
That's a fair assessment, I believe.
In addition, in response to that as well, there is also the ability to attach equipment to poles as well. And so it does in some ways address that, so that is accounted for. I think we could agree that there are probably rare instances when that should be an issue, but the design of the ordinance is to allow you to be able to account for instances when it does happen. that much of the issues will relate in the implementation of it and how it is administered, that I believe in working through that, we can actually, that the city would be able to address all of the concerns that.
Mr. President, only one point I have, one question rather. The initial cost for a new pole is taken by the owner,
It's taken up.
the owner, who puts that?
Yeah, they replace the new pole, whoever, yes, the owner.
Okay, so, once it's, put in place, does the city incur that cost of that new pole? It's always on the owner?
It's always on the owner, yes, sir.
If it has to be moved, it's based on the owner, I mean,
It's based on the owner.
who determines, in right-of-way situations where, whether it's the city, the county, whatever, we want to put a sidewalk in place? Who determines if, they take precedence when we require you to move it out of the way? What justifiable, we have any language in there to justify our ability to be able to say, you gotta move your pole because of stormwater line or whatever you wanna do with it?
That there is, Mr. Murphy. And
Are we
the only
protected?
thing that we actually asked to take out was anything that was designed by the city for beautification.
Well, and that's what I'm getting at, how is that language spelled out, because that could be,
It's pretty precise. I mean, if there's any utilities being moved, roads being widened, sidewalks being put in, things of that nature, if you're moving everything else, we have to be moved as well, and we pay for that.
They will incur that cost, and it does say beautification only, which those types of projects are usually defined by the council or the entities involved with them. It's to be minimal.
You represent the line, correct?
Yes, sir.
Perhaps you could speak to the recent article from New Jersey about the town that was questioning the number of notes that should be allowed on the pole. Do you have any knowledge about that?
I'm familiar with the issue in general. I'm not familiar about the specific New Jersey town, but is the issue about how many
notes should
co-locators
be
in there?
allowed, should be on one?
Well, I hate to add, but it depends, but typically there's room for at least two. You know, with the size of the poles, because this whole ordinance is intended to be more aesthetically pleasing, right? We're trying to bring the size down, put them in the right of way next to existing utility poles. So we're limited on height and we're limited on space.
Thank you. Anything else from the council?
If I could just comment real quick on the need for ongoing, this is a little different. The impact for Mr. Wyatt's follow-up throughout the years, if you recall, we've had a couple situations already where the big towers end up with things on there that weren't anticipated or we didn't know about. This is gonna be a very successful effort, I think. Ultimately, one way or another, there's gonna be a lot of these things. Hundreds, maybe thousands of poles all across the state doing these things. Just because the impact of just a static structure of a telephone pole or something with a wire up there is much different than a multi-node. I mean, you're essentially shrinking these cell towers down to a small footprint. And so I do think that there is, now, well, obviously this is the first reading, so we're gonna just follow up. I'm sure we'll have a lot of interesting follow-up questions. But there is further impact because we're not talking about a static pole with some wires at the top. We're talking about if we get 2, 3, 4 nodes or whatever, there's a lot of follow-up that needs to happen there. And then sometimes, because we have had other masts in the city that ended up with things that weren't anticipated or in review and take things now. So we're talking about a lot of those, a lot of mini situations like that. So I do think there's an ongoing inspection and the nodes increase that complexity. Like I said, it's first reading, so we can dig into that before that.
Well, you make a good point, because you're right, but every new node that goes on there requires a new permit application fee and a new issuance fee. So the node can then be reviewed.
Assuming that everybody's doing what they're supposed to. Now, I'm sure that what y'all are doing, I mean, it's gonna start well, but when you have lots of support structures out there with lots of things on them, somebody may skip a step, somebody may think, well, we already have something up there, we're gonna put more on there. So that's what I'm getting at. We assume that everybody's gonna do what they're supposed to go through an inspection process. But with 100 poles or 500 poles or 1,000 poles out there, we can't assume that everybody is gonna do it. And this is, a lot of different players could be putting a lot of different things in Hoover, so.
At least make the fee reasonable. $500 is not reasonable. It is twice the highest state fee. Make it reasonable. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think industry, had, were you getting up to comment, or were you stretching?
No, I was gonna comment, but I think,
Okay.
we may try and address it, outside this.
Generally, first readings, we generally don't have public participation. This is to allow you to learn more about the subject matter.
Public corrections to make of the statements that were
Okay. Can you keep those available in your mind until the comment period? You can, I'll write it down.
Mr. President, Mr. Singer emailed over some questions today. I sent it.
All right.
Okay, if you want us to follow up to that, we'll get some answers between the second meeting.
All right, that being taken care of, item 17 will be the first reading of ordinance 18-2380.
This ordinance authorizes the lease of unneeded municipal real property located at 2020 Valleydale Road, Suite 208, in the Alabama Department of Revenue. And authorizes Mayor Frank V. Borcato to execute a lease agreement related to this. Second reading of this item and its consideration for adoption will be on Monday, June 18th, 2018.
This is just a simple lease. This is the renewal of a current tenant at the Public Safety Center. Item 18, first reading of ordinance 18-2381, Mr. Corley.
This ordinance authorizes the lease of unneeded municipal real property located at 2020 Valleydale Road, Suite 108, to the Hoover Historical Society, and authorizes Mayor Frank V. Borcato to execute a lease agreement relating to this. Second reading of this item and its consideration for adoption will be on Monday, June 18th, 2018.
And this, again, is a simple lease with the Hoover Historical Society. First reading of ordinance 18-2382, Mr. Corley.
This ordinance rearranges, alters, and extends the city's corporate limits to include property owned by the Brook Highland Community Church as shown on the map attached to the ordinance. This is phase 6 of multi-stage annexation.
This is final ordinance. That being, is there any interest for the council to suspend the rules and deal with this ordinance right now? All right, hearing none, we got first reading of ordinance 18-2383.
This ordinance rearranges, alters, and extends the city's corporate limits to include property located at 118 Mars Hill Road, owned by Spine and Sports Properties LLC. Second reading of this item and its consideration for adoption will be on Monday, June 18th, 2018.
Very good. The following public hearings are continued from May 7th, 2018 city council meetings. First, we have public hearing to consider the request of Eric Shula, representing D.R. Horton, rezone property located on Old Rocky Ridge Road, R4, multifamily to RT4 townhouse. D.R. Horton is the property owner. I don't know if I stole all your thunder, Mr. Corley, ordinance 18-2370.
Yes, sir. This ordinance amends Hoover's zoning ordinance by rezoning property owned by D.R. Horton located at Old Rocky Ridge Road, R4 to RT4.
All right, this is a public hearing first. Anybody here to speak for or against? Yes, sir.
on behalf of the property.
Sure.
My name is Rhett Lumpin, 2188 Parkway Lake Drive, Hoover, Alabama. And thank you, gentlemen, for your time this evening. Our request before you is to rezone a 58-acre parcel located off of Old Rocky Ridge Road that is currently zoned R4 for a multifamily apartment use. And our request would be to zone it to RT4, which would allow for townhome units. Under the current zoning, the property would yield approximately 330 apartment units. Under our proposed zoning, it would yield approximately 170 townhome units. The property is situated on 58 acres, and based on the current site layout, 32 acres, or roughly 55% of the property, would not be developed. And of course, we'll work with Hoover on the tree conservation and buffer requirements that are required in their regulations as well. I know at the P&Z meeting a couple of months ago that traffic was a concern. This property, for history, was purchased by D.R. Horton in 2005 under its current apartment zoning use. And at that time, we did have a traffic study done by Skipper Consulting, which is, of course, a very reputable firm and still around. And I'll just read you just a few items from their traffic study. It said an eastbound left turn lane is not warranted on Old Rocky Ridge Road at the proposed development site. However, based on the topographic nature of Old Rocky Ridge Road, their knowledge of the area, and Jefferson County requirements, they recommended that an eastbound left turn lane be constructed to accommodate any eastbound traffic turning into the proposed development.
Now, you understand that we're not on that part yet.
Okay, well, I can wait.
Two different subject matters.
Well, sure, but I mean, this serves the whole development, but I'll wait if you prefer.
Well, it'd be better
Okay,
for purposes of the minutes.
okay.
Mr. Mack, you said approximately 170. It's been my understanding it was exactly 170.
170 maximum.
Okay, so it should be approximately down.
Yeah, approximately to a maximum of 170.
Mr. President, real quick, in the motion of planning and zoning, which I would assume we're going to preserve that in this motion here, it was capped, hard capped at 170, so it can't go any higher than 170. Even if the zoning is supported.
Don't go away, you're gonna come back. Any questions from the council?
Mr. President, Mr. Lovell, one of the questions that I've been asked by many citizens is based on the adjacent property and developments, why your company did not consider R1 zoning, single-family homes for this area. Can you explain?
Very simple, what we have invested in the property. We couldn't do R1 and get out of it what we have invested.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Anything from the audience? Yes, ma'am, come on down. Please remember that we're talking about the zone, not the roadway.
When do we get to talk about the road?
Next. So, get your spot close to the wall. Anything else about the zoning itself? Yes, sir, come on down.
I have some comments on this issue.
As long as it doesn't involve the roadway, we're fine. Trying to keep everything separate.
Good evening. My name is John Teese. I live in Jefferson County at 2505 Christie Circle, and that's in Acton Ridge Estates. I'm a graduate engineer, and I was a licensed professional engineer until I retired quite a few years ago. About 25 years ago, my wife and I purchased a lot and had our house built where it stands there in Acton Ridge Estates. We've seen how the area grows and how the narrow two-lane Old Rocky Ridge Road is impacted, know what its limitations are. About 12 years ago, a group of us in this area went through a similar situation as we're doing now, but it was with the Jefferson County Zoning Board. There were numerous problems that were brought up to the attention of Jefferson County by residents of the area, and in 2006 or 7, I might miss a year there, Jefferson County rejected the proposal. Now, I realize perfectly well that this hearing tonight is strictly a zoning issue, either multifamily or townhouses. But a much lower number of single-family homes would be a better fit for the area involved and its location. Hopefully, we will get to that realization sometime in the near future and work toward it. However, of the two choices that are before us tonight, either townhomes or the other, the townhomes would be a better fit than the multifamily. Now, I have 5 comments I'd like to make regarding this issue. And comments also apply if this was multifamily units rather than townhomes. And when I'm finished, I will give you a copy of my notes. First thing, accommodating the very large number of additional adults, children, and vehicles in the area that has 170 townhomes. This would add to the neighborhood quite a bit, and the 2-lane Old Rocky Ridge Road. This would be a very difficult thing to accomplish in a safe manner and with many obstacles in front of it. Secondly, the uncertainty of being able to secure the additional land that must be obtained for the turn lanes on Old Rocky Ridge Road. It's my understanding that 12 years ago, D.R. Horton was not able to do so, and turn lanes will be needed. Thirdly, major concern, safety concern for police and fire. I've been in contact with whom I consider the appropriate people in the city of Hoover. It's my understanding that the city usually requires more than one way for both access and egress from large projects. 170 units, pretty good sized project. This makes very good sense. And as I said, this is a large project. Suppose that a traffic accident has occurred on the single access road that's planned to this development, and the access road is blocked. A fire or medical emergency has occurred in this large townhouse project. The emergency personnel cannot get to the townhouse area, and houses burn up, and our people die. Another way, an additional way is needed. Where is it? As I understand, D.R. Horton, 12 years ago, wasn't able to secure this land for an additional way to get in and out of the project. So what does D.R. Horton do to solve this problem today? If they cannot, this proposed project is dead. Further, there are portions of the narrow 2-lane Old Rocky Ridge Road, and I've lived there about 25 years. I've seen it right out my back window. They don't have adequate shoulders so that vehicles can pull over to let fire engines pass if need be. The fourth point, the school situation. 170 townhomes. It'd probably be 100 to 200 students, somewhere in there. From what I understand and have read over the last several years, City of Hoover school system doesn't want large number of additional students. And Rocky Ridge Elementary School, which is 2 miles down Old Rocky Ridge Road from this site, doesn't have room for any more students. I've talked to some teachers that teach there, and that's what they tell me. So, with approval of this project, schools in Hoover are going to get these additional students. And there's another point. Old Rocky Ridge Road doesn't have these adequate shoulders so that vehicles can pull over and let fire engines through. Now, on the school situation itself, 170 townhomes, there would probably be these students, and I just can't see this happening in the school system accommodating it. So that would be a no vote for this project. Now, the negative traffic impact that this proposed project would have on existing residents of the area. Take a weekday morning, Monday through Friday. You're probably going to have 170 townhomes, 100, 200 additional vehicles trying to get onto Old Rocky Ridge Road. within an hour or two. There's currently quite a bit of traffic on Old Rocky Ridge Road. And in addition, there are school buses from 3 school systems that negotiate Old Rocky Ridge Road. You've got Jefferson County, Shelby County, and you've got Hoover. And they are using this road when you're dumping all this additional traffic onto it. So I realize that the matter before the council tonight is strictly a zoning issue, multifamily or townhouses. And of these two, if we're limited to those two, townhouses would be a better fit. Be smaller number of vehicles, smaller number of people. You folks on the city council of Hoover, you're well educated and you're intelligent. I believe that in your hearts you realize that a lesser number of single-family homes would be a better fit than either of these other 2 options that we're discussing this evening. I humbly request that you try and find a way to accomplish this.
Thank you, sir.
That's my comments.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, since he's already breached the roadway, I'm going to let you go on down.
Susan Sallin, 3869 Ripple Leaf Circle, that's River Forest Garden Homes. And he said it pretty well, way more eloquently than I can possibly do. I have a question for the council or, the people who are responsible for maintenance. Are there specific regulations about traffic and development around historic cemeteries? That's not been anything that's been discussed.
Mr. Mack.
I'm unaware.
First police chief is buried.
I'm unaware of any outside of the property boundaries for said cemetery.
This is a kind of a family cemetery. Are those people aware of the development that's going on?
If they are in a position to be the person of notification of the tax offices. That's how the notifications are sent.
Thank you for entertaining that question. Then the other one is all the discussion that we had last time, as well as the stuff that was brought up tonight about the safety of the roads, the environment, and the environmental impact, the impact on the schools. And last time you said that's not the time to discuss it. When will that be discussed?
Well,
Mr. President, I can address that real quick.
go ahead.
Because in planning and zoning, which I've had the joy of being on for a couple of years now, it actually is a joy. There's a lot of cool things, a lot of controversial things too. That would be part of the plat approval, correct, for access. So this is one of those situations where it'd be great if we had a bunch of blank land and a bunch of blank zoning, and as a city planner or as a council, we could march through the blank slate and zone it. However, we have decades, sometimes almost a century of zoning that's there. And so if we could hop in the DeLorean and go back in time to past councils, and if you look at this map, there's some things we would say to past councils and county commissions, and who knows what they were doing back then when this map was planned. But it is what we have. So this is one of those things where it comes down to just the zoning answers these questions. Is it appropriate land use? Is it good for the health, safety, welfare? Those high-level questions. When it comes to the detailed tactical type, what I would call tactical questions of access, offsets, how many things will fit there, that is a process that our subdivision regulations, and there are more specific regulations for, we just, sidewalks and things that have been passed recently. That's where those specific things get in there. My understanding, and back, you're nodding your head, so I'm assuming I'm correct here. The county would still have to approve any access, turn lanes, everything, because that's their road. They have to approve that. Any of these other things we're talking about, dual access, and again, we've seen several weird parcels that we've had to find ways, and that's a long process sometimes, and there's times in planning and zoning when it's months before we even see it in planning and zoning, because the city is working very diligently to work through those detailed issues. So whatever the zoning is, they still have to follow regulations when they get that final plat approval. That is the map, how it's gonna work out, what the final layout is gonna be, how many units are in there, where the roads are accessed, and all those things. Those are the specific questions that people have been addressing, or those are that plat approvals where it is. That's why Mr. President keeps saying this is just about the zoning. This is just about the zoning, because this really is, you know, what. And to me, let me talk about it a little bit. This is going to the issue of the schools. The school system has a big spreadsheet that has a list of school impact with known zoning. Again, the things that we've brought forward. We know whether, and this has the 330. So the school system is expecting 330 units. This is a chance to actually reduce those projections if we approve this. So from a school impact, from a traffic impact, the zoning itself, you know, that's what we can throw out. So that's a long roundabout answer to your question, hopefully. But yes, there is another process in planning and zoning to go over all the details that you're asking questions about.
Now, let me ask another specific question. When you get to the zoning and the details, is there a possibility for a no-go decision? No development, that the roads are not adequate to support the traffic.
No, ma'am, and please, give me an opportunity to explain that. The property is already zoned for apartments. They can go tomorrow morning and get a permit to be on 330 units tomorrow and not come before the council, not go before planning and zoning other than providing plats and things like that. Like Mr. Shaw said, this is giving the city an opportunity to reduce those numbers. And instead of having people moving in and out because they're apartments, likely to have a majority of owner occupied. And they're hopefully gonna have, they're gonna take care of what's theirs better than somebody that's just rented. That make sense?
It absolutely does make sense. And I appreciate you explaining that. My understanding of what you're saying is that there is no set of circumstances related to the roadway, the school impact, the environmental impact, that we can stop development.
Now, we can talk about
Correct
the roadway.
conclusion?
We can talk about the roadway for just a second. It could be that this body does not allow the annexation of that roadway. But anybody that owns property has legal access to that property. Some people call them flag lots on individual single-family dwellings. But they have to have legal access to their property. One way could be, instead of this road, they could go to the Richland townhomes, because those streets are already studded. It's almost like this property was gonna be a future extension of that development, and for whatever reason, they sold the property and it was rezoned for apartments. This was decades ago. So, you know, it's either gonna go through Richelieu, or it's gonna go out on the Rocky Ridge, and for all I know, it may be both. I'm not a lawyer. So I don't know if they'll still have access to Richelieu or not. But the gentleman was talking about 2 ways in, that would be your second way.
One of the second ways, yes.
Yes, sir. Okay?
Mr. President, if I could ask that,
Yes, sir.
because this question was asked line, is there anything we can do to stop this development altogether? In the state of Alabama, property rights are very important, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, we all own homes and we own people own businesses and things. If people could stop development completely, you know, it would be nice because it'd leave more trees, you know, for the birds and squirrels. But at the end of the day, if somebody owns property, they have a right to develop it. That doesn't mean they can do whatever they want. And there's still a process, and that plat approval process that I talked about and everything, that was where a lot of these details will be worked out. But if people own property, they have a right to develop it, and it's up to the city to make sure we do it in the best use and the smartest way possible, given what has moved forward through the decades.
Got it.
anyone else like to
Thank you.
speak to the subject?
Mr. President, I have
Dr. Middlebrooks, yes, sir.
since we're talking about roads, to further her point, I think maybe another way she could go about it to look at it is, Mr. Schuler, can you remind me when that traffic study was done?
That's, I can tell with these, 2007-ish.
2007. And that was based upon 330 units or 100?
It says it was based on 270 units, not real sure why. That's the best I can find.
And it is recommending an eastbound left turn lane, correct?
I can read you verbatim if you like what it recommends. It did recommend one. It didn't say one was warranted based on traffic volumes, but based on topography and their knowledge of the area at that time, they did recommend one. Correct.
What year was that recommendation?
I believe it was 2007.
So another recommendation.
I went and met with Jefferson County, and they said no further traffic study would be required. That was Roads and Transportation's opinion.
Mr. Mack, how long are traffic studies good for? Definitely.
Old Rocky Ridge is a county road, so we're really not gonna have much control over it.
Well, as the gentleman mentioned, before Jefferson County issued a permit to access and construct that intersection, they're gonna require a new traffic study to be conducted.
If the traffic study were to say that a left turn lane was warranted, is it possible on that roadway, is there enough right of way or leeway there to build that turn lane?
In my inquiries this afternoon dealing with that very question, no, there's not enough right-of-way to accommodate the left turn lane as the right-of-way exists today. There would have to be acquisition of additional right-of-way.
From the homeowners there, I assume.
More than likely along the south side of the right-of-way, so abutting Wendover and the other neighborhood adjacent to it.
So,
That would be River Forest Gardens.
Okay, River Forest.
so if a turn lane is warranted and there's not room for that to be built, would the plat approval then be denied based on that?
That would certainly weigh heavily on our recommendation to the planning commission. If there's any way possible, we want to make sure that the traffic study is completely followed with its recommendations. And we would also, if at all possible, look for an alternative means of ingress and egress for 170 units.
And as far as the traffic study goes, how much weight is given during that traffic study on the number of units? Say we approved 170 units versus what's already there, 330 units.
Well, the traffic engineer will have a different calculation based on the type of unit that's going to be there. Apartment units typically have a different traffic generation factor.
Higher or lower?
I've actually seen some studies depending on the type of apartment that single family produces higher amounts of traffic than apartment complexes. But it just, again, it depends on the development type.
So an apartment complex that's already there could possibly warrant a turn lane, whereas a townhome unit subdivision possibly may not warrant that.
I'd have to leave that up to the traffic engineers.
Thank you.
Let's try to get the rezoning part out of the way at this point. Any other questions from the council? We have a motion and a second. We probably might want to think about it. Public hearing is now over, and I'm open for a motion.
Yes, Mr. President, I move to adopt ordinance 18-237.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any more conversation from the council? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Lyons?
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks?
Nay.
Old Rocky Ridge Road and owned by D.R. Ford to Hoover RQ4 as allowed by Alabama Code Section 11-15-85.
And this is the section that would give you access off of Old Rocky Ridge Road into the complex, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct. The 3 acres stretches from Old Rocky Ridge to the southern border of the 58 acres that was just rezoned. And it is currently zoned for duplex use in unincorporated Jefferson County. Our hope was to consolidate services and then in the approval process in one municipality, that being Hoover. I did meet with Jefferson County about this and said, what if the property's not annexed into Hoover? What would happen then? And they said that road plans would be submitted to their county roads and transportation, and it would go through their normal plan review process. They further said that no rezoning or subdivision case would be required in Jefferson County. It would just be treated as a normal road plan review. If we chose to put duplex units on that property, then we would have to do a subdivision case to ensure that we meet their subdivision regulations.
County subdivision?
County subdivision, yes, sir.
Mr. Mack. It's my understanding that this roadway is pretty close to one of the structures. Are there any setback requirements that it would interfere with?
Not to my knowledge at this point. I think some of the structures you're referring to are in the neighborhood immediately to the west of unincorporated Jefferson County. The subdivision is subject to its own plat with its various requirements on setbacks. I'm not aware of a setback that would be required between the property line and this road.
Very good.
Mr. President, a couple of things here. So, understand that we're definitely reducing the amount of,
By the way, this is a public hearing too. Got that?
okay. I haven't seen the traffic study, so I can only assume a couple of things, or ask for the assumptions. That egress determination was made upon what road, coming out of the left turn lane? What Skipper's, evaluation was made upon what exit location for that property?
The one that we're considering right now.
Okay.
There's only one strip of land there, 50-foot right-of-way, strip of land. So that is the ingress, egress, and Skipper did their traffic study on that.
And not to cause issues down the road with other property. But he made his traffic study off of just that alone and not a second way out. Whether you can do it or not, get to the point. The challenge that I have is 2-lane road, a lot of traffic, possible accidents. Will a traffic light be put in place? Is the traffic light, will it bottleneck down the road? I mean,
No, sir, per Jefferson County, or my meeting with them, a traffic light would not be required at that intersection.
and they're basing it off of 2007 study or recent study they just can't have.
No, the study that's in the file.
But they may go back with your new traffic study.
At the meeting I had with them, they said that under their current thinking, a new traffic study would not be required. I guess they're subject to change their thinking if they choose to do so.
Okay, Councilman Shaw, educate me a little bit on what right do we have, or flexibility we have as a city regarding the traffic outcome right here? I mean, I know it doesn't come back to us,
I mean, I'll defer to Mr. Martin. I don't think when it comes to the access road on Old Rocky Ridge, I don't know what impact do we have any right to say what turn lanes and things like that, or, assuming if this were annexed, then we would have, more say in the roadway once we're off the road, but I think,
And you're referring to the access road itself?
Yeah, and what I'm saying is, if traffic right now, I don't know if it's a C, D, F, I don't know the road conditions during times. Whatever it is, if you put more onto it, it's gonna cause somewhat of an issue, period. So, knowing that, knowing the growth is gonna occur, knowing that Hoover is a desirable place to be. And is this heading towards Estavia as well too, that direction? It's on the same road, right? I mean, you travel.
Old Rocky Ridge, this is parallel to 459.
Okay.
About the school board building off to.
Oh, wait, because you can get from Vestavia to Highway 2, people take that as a route as well, too. I mean, I would love for us to really, whatever we can do to, and I'm not gonna belabor the point, but whatever we can do to evaluate that portion of it. I think we reduced it down, is what it is on that, but we need to come up with some type of idea on what we can do.
Well, I guess I misunderstood the question. I thought you meant on Old Rocky Ridge Road, but in the roadway that leads up, if this were in Hoover and not in the county, is there any particular subdivision regulation application that would apply there that would be different? I remember I asked Mr. Long this in planning and zoning. I said, are our regulations for that road any different than the county? And Mr. Long, you said that they were not, right? Our standards for that access road would be exactly the same as the county, correct?
Right, and if this portion is annexed into the city, it would not be a case for Jefferson County in subdividing duplex lots. It would be a case for us looking at townhome lots, and we would be reviewing the road in the development in its entirety at that point, from Old Rocky Ridge Road all the way back to the development.
So we'll have some say-so within that.
Yes, on the interior street, yes.
Right, if it stayed in the county, then our only say-so would be the access up the hill past the properties, correct?
That's right. And one of the reasons that city administration recommended this to P&Z committee is because we wanted to have more consistency throughout the development from where it leaves Old Rocky Ridge Road throughout the development site. If this portion remains in unincorporated Jefferson County, you'll have two governmental entities reviewing the development. The front part of the development will likely be a duplex style development, going by their regulations, the back part being ours. So this annexation would allow for the entire property to come under our review.
Thank you. Mr. Posey. Mr. Love, my question is for you. As you mentioned earlier, there's a family cemetery there. I do have relatives buried in that cemetery. What are you going to do to preserve that cemetery and possibly, provide a little bit of access to it? Since you're building directly beside it, or would be building right beside it?
Well, I don't know that we have specific plans to address the cemetery. I mean, we will stay within obviously our property boundaries, not go outside of them. I do know that on the left side, if you're going into the development, the proposed development, there would be a retaining wall on the left side, and then there would be landscaping on the right side, obviously for our benefit and everyone's benefit, and plus we have to meet the city's landscaping regulations. But I don't know that there's anything specific that we discussed as far as the cemetery.
Probably have a road.
Well, we'd obviously have to.
If I may add to that, it may help answer your question. The city subdivision regulations now require sidewalks on both sides of the street, and these sidewalks would provide more access to the cemetery from at least this neighborhood along the frontage.
Would you use ground penetrating radar to make sure that you're not violating any kind of grade with the structure?
That's a great question.
That's why we have Mr. Posey.
I'll let the developer answer that.
I don't have an answer for that, I'm sorry.
Ms. Sheila, sounds like, come back. Sounds like you would have a lesser issue by getting the road built by county standards rather than by city. Why do you want to bring the road
We felt like it would be, as Matt, Mr. Martin alluded to, bringing everything under one municipality, having one set of city services, having one zoning classification for the whole property. That was our reasoning.
Taking it to the county, and the council to get the road authorized?
No, sir, because our first choice is to have it in Hoover. If, that's why I went and met with the county to see what would happen if it didn't go in Hoover.
Anything else? Anything else from the audience? Hearing none? Oh, yes, sir, come on down. Please give us your name and address.
My name is Tom Kendall, Thomas, gentlemen, ladies. I live at 404 Shadeswood Circle. A while ago, when I saw the gentleman here about these lots are going to be cleaned off, I'm very pleased to hear that 400 Shadeswood Circle is going to finally get cut, cleared up.
Are you talking about the zoning of this road?
No, I'm not talking, I thought you wanted to talk about something new.
No, we're not quite there.
Oh, okay.
I think the mayor.
Probably do want to talk about it.
We do want to talk about it, but I think the mayor's got a spot just ahead of you.
Okay.
Seeing nothing else, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Make a motion to correct.
Dawn, yes.
Is the hearing closed, Mr. President?
Public hearing is closed.
Mr. President, I would move for adoption of ordinance 18-2371.
Second. Trying not to have to buy food again tonight. We have a motion and a second. Anything else from the council? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion, the ordinance is adopted. Next is going to be the first reading of ordinance 18-2384. Mr. Corley.
This ordinance rearranges, alters, and extends the city's corporate limits to include property located on Old Rocky Ridge Road, owned by D.R. Horton, and rezoned by the city. Second reading of this item and consideration for adoption will be on Monday, June 18, 2018.
This is strictly for the annexation of the pre-voted property. Now, we have been waiting with bated breath. Mayor. Technology. Finally it works. Mayor has a presentation for us this evening.
President, while we're waiting, Mr. Schuler, do you have a business card? Mr. Levin.
All this interest Thank Fox and CNN. We have C-SPAN. We have C-SPAN, yeah.
Mr. President, I appreciate the time to come up and speak to everyone tonight.
Go over 2 hours, food's on you.
We will not go over 2 hours, I promise you. I do want to ask you one question I wish that each of you gives some serious consideration over the next month. That's, what do you want Hoover to look like in the next 25 years? We've been having a conversation about our financial position for many months, and tonight I want to bring a proposal to you how to keep Hoover a vibrant city. Clearly there's nothing to be voted on tonight. And over the next 4 weeks, we'll have an opportunity to discuss this proposal and hear from our citizens and about what they want Hoover to be. So just to recap, what we've been talking about really for about 18 months. I won't go over 18 months. But before getting to my presentation, early in our administration, both our CFO, Dr. Lopez, and our city treasurer, Mr. Yeager, informed me that our revenue projections were not keeping up with our expense projections. So we didn't ignore that information as the mayor and the council. Rather, we had Dr. Lopez engage an outside firm, Porter White, to run a 5-year analysis of our revenue and expense projections, which they did. And earlier this year, we had an opportunity as a council and as a city to study the report by Porter White. As you know, Porter White generated a worst-case scenario, middle of the road, and a best-case scenario. And the spreadsheet that we most often refer to uses the numbers in the middle of the road. So I think early on, many of us were in disbelief. However, judging by the various options that some of you have suggested as we've talked, I don't believe that's the case anymore. I believe you each recognize we have a financial challenge ahead of us. So as the mayor, it's my responsibility to run this city with peak efficiency, with the money you provide as a city council, and our citizens expect us to be good stewards of the dollars they send us each day. I'm a fiscally conservative individual. I did develop that characteristic when I became the mayor.
I can attend to that. I used to have to steal his grocery change for house food at the fire station.
I developed it over 40 years working for the city. I had a solid reputation for being fiscally conservative then, and I believe I would continue to be labeled that way as the mayor today. Anyone who doubts that can ask any of our department heads out here about my budget philosophy. So armed with the information that Dr. Lopez and Mr. Yeager shared with us, along with the results of Porter White, we began taking measures that you as a council and our citizens would expect us to do, and that is control and reduce our expenses. So over the past 18 months, we began to address challenges that were in our control and to put into action good management principles. We took the deficit in the current budget head on. And we are on track to eliminate a $3 million shortfall that we were facing. So last year, we began a process of gathering feedback from our citizens. We call it Future Hoover. The results of this effort are being incorporated into our overall comprehensive plan that Mac will be presenting in the next month or so. And it's important for you to know that these results are driving the information that I'm bringing you tonight. So we looked at the quality of life, and 32% said, and I agree, the quality of life in Hoover is excellent. 62% said it was good, so I want to get to excellent. I think we have a lot of opportunities to improve. We've got a great city. So what are our budget challenges, our future budget challenges? Well, we need an average of $11 million per year to close future deficits and maintain our current quality of life and the services that we all have come to enjoy. Hoover's never been a community that just maintains. We want to keep moving forward. Very important. Part of that $11 million will be for routine capital projects for all city departments. We must be able to keep attracting and retaining outstanding employees and to maintain a competitive edge.
We've got great employees that pour their heart and soul out each day to this city. We need to focus on revitalization and protection of our original neighborhood. It's so important to look at New Hoover. We've got some wonderful new developments all across our city. Let's don't forget how important our older original neighborhoods are. So future Hoover Town Hall online surveys, we asked our citizens what services they want, and they told us they want strong schools, they want a performing arts center, city center, downtown if we could, and better traffic management. So let's start with our schools. Great schools, I think it brings people to our cities. 60% of the residents surveyed told us that schools were an important issue for the city's future. So I'm proposing that we increase our support for Hoover City Schools by an additional $4 million per year. So how do we get to that number? This is the amount needed for capital improvements identified in the Hoover City School Future Needs Projection, if it were to be paid for by a bond. Plus, it's an additional $1.3 million operating funds per year. The total would be $4 million. This would cover all their capital needs, all their classrooms, in addition to renovations at Berry Middle School, River Chase Elementary, Wynn Elementary, Bluff Park, and roofing and paving projects across the school system. Now, it's entirely up to the Board of Education on how they use those funds. I only use the bond issue as an example. But the point I want to make is that we want to take care of those needs, keep our city schools strong and healthy. This means you, as a council, will have increased cash support by $6.8 million since 2017. And total support would now equal $11.1 million per year. This equals 10% of our general fund budget. And then they talk about traffic management. 78% of the residents told us that traffic negatively impacts their quality of life. Now, we've got some solutions out there now that we're working on. We're working on Patton Chapel Road, the Jim Wilson Boulevard extension going over to River Chase. We've got the Valleydale Road project, South Chasecrest Road. We desperately need to provide relief on Highway 150 into the western part of Hoover. So we're actively pursuing approval of federal and state funds to build a new interchange along I-459 to serve western Hoover, and also to make tremendous improvements to the Highway 150 exit. This will require us to spend $22 million in matching funds. See, this is about a $110 million project. And then they talk, and I hear this just about every day, the need for a performing arts center, a community arts center in our city. We talk a lot about sports all the time. We hear that we're missing that piece of our city. 58% have told us that they want a facility for the fine and performing arts. We, even tonight, recently appointed a city arts council, and planning for this type facility, I believe, will be very high on their agenda. This proposal includes $22 million to build a community arts center that we can all be proud of, and it also includes $1 million a year to operate. And I want you to just visualize walking into a great performing arts center filled with Hoover residents and metropolitan area residents watching the Alabama Symphony, one of our great jazz ensembles from Hoover or Spain Park, or some great show right here in our city. I want you to imagine that. It's exciting to me, something I hope that we can get to. And then our future Hoover efforts, 56% of the residents said they support the construction of a library branch in the eastern part of Hoover. Coincidentally, also in 2017, the Hoover Library Strategic Planning Survey 75% of the people that they surveyed said it was important to them as well. So it's a clear indication that we need to meet this need for our citizens in the eastern part of our city. For this reason, I'm proposing that we allocate $1.7 million to provide a library branch and also $700,000 a year to operate. Our future Hoover process also told us that our bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure were inadequate. In fact, these were 2 of the 3 city services that actually received an unfavorable rating. The third one was public transportation. So we've already invested in a great plan, and we're proposing to spend $500,000 a year to implement this bicycle pedestrian plan throughout our city. This is something that obviously would be done in phases. In tourism and culture, Aldridge Gardens is a wonderful amenity in our city. We have so many great parks, but this particular one is so important. We need to ensure that it will be enjoyed for generations to come. These funds will not only do that, but it will also allow us to assist our travel and tourism industry in landing and conducting major events in Hoover, Alabama. And then we have an immediate opportunity, a tremendous opportunity, an announcement that will be coming in probably 30 to 60 days, and you all are aware of it. And it involves the single biggest investment in our city since the construction of the River Chase Galleria. While this is not a retail project, it's something that will fundamentally change Hoover for the better. We cannot afford to miss out on this opportunity. I'm proposing that we commit $20 million to provide land, site preparation, utilities, and traffic solution for this $300 million monumental opportunity that will bring over 1,000 jobs to the city of Hoover. And then a second opportunity that we have, many of our citizens continually interested in new entertainment and dining experiences that are associated with a city center or downtown. It's very important that we participate in future planning for our River Chase Galleria campus. These discussions have been underway since we all took office, and now there are very concrete, solid plans being drafted to achieve these 2 goals. The city needs to be in a position to capitalize on this momentum. Momentum is so important. So, gentlemen, this slide will summarize the projects and the initiatives that are important to our citizens. It's within our reach. So how can we pay for this? Basically, there are 3 options out there. While an occupational tax might generate enough money, I think it would hurt our business recruitment, business retention efforts. We're much more competitive without it. I can't recommend it. I don't know that I would even get the support of the council. And then there's an increase in property tax that's been discussed. But because I believe that's the primary funding source for our schools, and we should leave this revenue for their use. I fully support partnering with Hoover City Schools to pursue legislation on this matter at the time they believe it is necessary. So just look at some tax comparisons, if you would. It's important to know where we stand in terms of tax rates, just looking at our other communities. So these tables show how we compare on property tax, sales tax, and garbage fees with Mountain Brook, Homewood, and Vestavia Hills, Alabama. Also, you can see how property taxes in Hoover are distributed among the city, county, state, and Hoover City schools. The most telling part of this slide is that Hoover only receives, our city, the operation of our city, property taxes, on a $300,000 house, we receive $183. I'll talk about this a little bit more later on. So that brings me to the proposal. We need to bring our sales and use tax components and our lease rental tax rate up to the same level as our neighboring cities, increasing it 1 penny, and that would put us at 4%. We also need to bring our lodging tax rate up to the same level as most of our neighbors at 6%. We will actually still be below one city nearby. As I said previously, it's very important to maintain fiscal responsibility, even if we receive all of these revenues. Our staff has determined a way to use a portion of the funds from the proposal to pay debt, improve our cash reserves, and or pay cash for most of these needs rather than borrowing more money. So by moving in this direction, we will correct the current, what I believe, current unsustainable trend in our finances. We will also meet our citizens' expectations, so important, by investing in our schools, our city, and our future. So I hear a lot about taxes and all the rhetoric and the demagoguery that's just really overwhelming. I understand tax and spend, live within your means, cut services and employees. I get it. I think we're all very tired of wasteful spending in America, which is why my first action was to make cuts where we could. But as I look at Hoover, I appreciate the city that we've become. This city has been built to a level of excellence over 50 years by listening to our citizens and meeting their needs and their expectations. We can't continue to be a great city unless we are willing to pay for the great things that we have and the great things we aspire to have. We've been living off of 3 pennies for 50 years. The last time we raised a penny sales tax was 24 years ago. Obviously, everything costs more than it did in 1994, including city services. In 1994, gas cost $1.17 a gallon. A new police officer in Hoover made $24,000 a year. Gas is now around $2.50 a gallon. That new Hoover police officer now earns over $43,000 per year. Sales tax is the way our city and our state pays for almost everything except education. It's just not within our power to change the state constitution. So ad valorem tax, property tax. The median home price in Hoover is about $300,000, maybe a little bit. That home brings us in revenue, as I said, $183 a year. This amount does not even cover garbage collection, much less any other services. So we have to make up our revenue through other sources such as sales tax. This is our only option under the Alabama Constitution. In fact, if you take the city's entire portion of the property tax, everything that we give that goes into our coffers to service our city, it would only cover 25% of our public safety budget. Another example, if you take all of the money collected on homes in Hoover and applied it towards trash pickup, you would still be about $2.5 million short. Have to make it up with our sales tax. So what can a penny do? A penny can do a lot. A penny is the difference between meeting our expectations and losing our momentum. Folks, it's just a penny. That's how we pay for all the wonderful things that we have. 100% of this money will stay right here in Hoover, right here under your control. So just like our neighboring cities, they've invested in themselves. Mountain Brook, Homewood, Vestavia. They didn't hesitate to invest in themselves. So as we close tonight, I ask you to reflect on all that Hoover is, what it can be, what our citizens expect. Nobody moved to Hoover to be average or see us fall behind. We've got a wonderful city. We need to continue to build on our past. Gentlemen, we are truly at the crossroads, and it's time to decide our future. I'll close with this question. What type of city will we be? I appreciate your time and thank you for all of folks that have waited out here so long tonight. And if you have any questions, certainly we are here to answer those along with the staff. Thank you very much.
Mayor, that was an excellent presentation. Any questions from the council? I know we have studying to do. We have our own due diligence.
Mr. President, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Is this presentation posted on the website? Will be tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
We will have a draft form for you to look at in the next few days. And we would like for the first reading to take place at our next council meeting. And we would like a vote on it July 2nd meeting as well. We need to act. We've known for months what we need to do, so I will agree with that.
I know that several council members, including myself, have had different thoughts about what we could or should do. Personally, I think tonight is the mayor's night. And I think we all have some due diligence, and we'll certainly be talking with the mayor's office and among ourselves, not in a formal fashion. Or you in the back. This is an issue that needs to be addressed. Will we be able to vote it on July the 2nd? Time will tell. Time will tell. Any questions from the audience on the presentation? Mesmerized, Mayor. Well, hearing no additional questions or comments, Mr. Leiter, we got a few bills.
Yes, sir, Mr. Smith, I would recommend to move the bills be paid in full as presented.
Second. Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those nay, the ayes have it. Comments and questions from the council. First, I would like to say to the mayor and staff, what a great SEC tournament was held. If it hadn't been for a little bit of weather, we certainly would have set a new record for the history of the tournament in Hoover. We also had the golf tournament prior to that. And between the two, probably both brought over 300,000 people, if not more, into Hoover. You couldn't get a hotel room. I had a corporate event going on, and I had to get them a place downtown. There was nowhere in Hoover to get rooms. We should have passed that lodging tax a couple of meetings. Any other comments or questions from the council? I would also like to bring up, and I know I can't say the officer's name, but we had an officer during a cardiac arrest during the SEC tournament. The mayor and Mr. Rice and I know that 999 times out of 1,000, we would have had a funeral last week. But God's put him on this earth for some reason, and he hasn't finished yet. Because this young man went through 20 defibrillations and was dismissed from the hospital, I think, this past week. And it's because everything that was supposed to work right, worked right. He was found right at the time he went into cardiac arrest by fellow officers. The fire department, because they were right there at the tournament, was in the right place at the right time. One employee in particular. The FED on 150, had they had to have gone to another facility, my money certainly would have perished. And the emergency medical system worked, the hospital system worked, and thankfully to that, this officer, hopefully, fire department, hopefully this gentleman will be able to come back to work by the end of summer. So, Mr. Arnold, you want to bring up those thoughts you had earlier? As long as we don't go to 9 o'clock, I don't have to buy supper.
I'm surprised the attorneys for the communications companies were not completely familiar with the ordinance. My recollection is that to place with same size or smaller equipment, there is no application or permit fee required, just notification that they're going to be in the right of way. With regard to utilizing existing poles, the antenna is a small item compared to the associated equipment storage area, which can be as much as 28 cubic feet, which is not a tiny thing, which is going to be located on the ground somewhere. So it's not just the antenna that's involved.
Mr. Singer, you being hailed from New Jersey, you should look up the article from a small town in New Jersey that is having issues with Verizon right now because in their ordinance how they dealt with the maximum number of nodes that can be placed. And from the quick look I had at the article, we're talking about 10 or more nodes on one pole. And I think in their eyes that might be unsightly.
Well, I have no idea what part of New Jersey.
Oh, you'll look it up.
Okay, but getting back, he indicated that each node would have its own separate application, but each node, up to 30 nodes can be on one application. So there's one application fee of $200 plus $100 for the permit fee for each node. But, you know, he overstated in some cases, understated in some cases. I just wanted to get it on the record. I've taken the time to read through the ordinance 3 times. Again, thank you, Dr. Middlebrooks, for posting the packet. It's very, very much needed. I support the idea of 5G. I've actually done some lecturing on it. My own background is advanced technology, so it's not something new to me. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Next gentleman, we want to talk about Shadywood Circle, I believe. Yes, your name and address, please. Got to hurry before Dr. Lopez freezes.
Hurry. I'm Thomas Kendall. Bears, very nice presentation. In reference to your presentation, some of mine falls in the same respect, and it's our neighborhoods. Some of them are in great shape. The one I live in, right next door to me, is a garbage dump. It's at 400 Shadeswood Circle. Got it down. You ever got a chance to ride by it? Take a real good look at it. Ask me if you'd like to live next to the door or what I live next door to.
That particular structure is involved.
Sir?
That particular property was involved in one of the votes.
Right. Is one of them going to be cut? Yes, sir. I hope you cut the shrubs too. 'Cause it's a mess. One of the things I want to discuss is sitting in the driveway of this house. It's 2 automobiles. These 2 cars, one of them happens to be a Corvette. The last tag that was put on it was in 1997. It's rotted completely out. The tires are flat on it. All the interior is gone in it from the T-top's been leaking. Sitting there next to it is a Volkswagen Jetta. This woman bought it used. The last tag on it was 2007. The T-top on top of it is cracked just about that much. The interior of it is completely gone. Now, in front of both of these cars is garage doors. The window has fallen completely out of one of the windows. You can walk up there and you can look in it. There's nothing in it but a garbage dump. All she had to do years ago was to clean all the garbage out of there, put it on the street to be picked up, and put the two cars in the garage and close the doors down. They may have been still in pretty good shape today. We have a law here in Hoover about picking up junk vehicles in driveways. And these two are not the only two that's around this town. There's others.
Sir, there is no current legal standing.
But I'd like to point this out to you, sir.
I understand, but we have an ordinance that's already.
Here's an ordinance right here.
That
We have to rewrite our ordinance. We have to rewrite our ordinance to be written like this ordinance is, which is written by the city of Birmingham and the city of Homewood, and it's already been proven in law. It will stick, and you can pick up those junk vehicles. You don't have to go out there and put a notice on them ahead of time or anything like that.
We're happy with the ordinance that's already coming through. We're waiting for Mr. Green to call a committee meeting to get it passed through committee, and then it will come back to the council.
That's fantastic. I hope we do it very shortly. The thing I'm leading up to with you, Mr. Mayor, with what you had to say and what I go along with, is my house right now today, I moved into it in the year of 2000, October of 2000. If I wanted to sell it today, with what I've got sitting next to me, I don't know what I could sell my house for. But I will make you one promise. I can't sell it for what it's worth. Because nobody would want to buy it with what I've got next door to me. That's property tax. You're riding around Bluff Park, which I love. As a matter of fact, the very first house I ever bought was in Bluff Park in '73. I came out of the service, came back to Birmingham, and bought this house in '73. If you ever go up on Farley Place, turn off Farley Road, turn on Farley Place, it's the second house on the right. It looks right now, today, as good as the day I sold it in 1980. The value of that house up there is held. Matter of fact, using facts and figures, I paid $18,000 for the house back then. Probably the house is worth $160,000, $70,000 right now today. It's gone up in value. What could I get for mine next to what I live next door to? I don't know. Here's just a few photos I got. I'll pass them around. But if you happen to be up in that area in Bluff Park and you're riding around, you go up Patton Chapel Road and turn left on Farley. You go 2, 3 long blocks, and you come to a 3-way stop. Turn right on Farley Road. The third house on the left is this one right here. You've got a junk car in the car, a junk pickup truck in the carport. It's got a junk car in the front yard in the grass. It's white with a black fender on it. Been there at least 5 or 6 months. Carport looks like a dump. This house is right next to it. It doesn't have any junk cars, but the carport looks like a dump. Here's a house right here. 2 shots of it. It's on a different street. The man runs a business out of his house. He finally did get rid of the travel trailers out of his front yard, 2 of them. He claims I'm going to sell, I'm going to get rid of my business, and I'm going to move out of Bluff Park. Well, if I could help him, I'd certainly come up there and help him. And I know all of his neighbors would be glad to help him to clean that mess up. Here's a house right here. It's on Alford Avenue. The only thing you see when you look at this photograph right here is a bunch of kudzu. Let's take a look at it. There's a driveway. On the right-hand side, you can see a carport, but you can't see anything else. And there's no mailbox on the street. It's an abandoned house. The city of Hoover does what you're talking about, sir. We start cleaning some of this junk up. The property values of Hoover are going to start going up. That's going to mean more revenue and more tax dollars for the city. Mr. Smith, I appreciate what you told me just now, that you're looking at changing this law so that you can pick up these junk cars, because this is just a couple of three that I just mentioned, but we can ride around town and I can show you a whole bunch more.
Any property maintenance issues that you find, you can report to building inspections.
Right.
You can call the addresses in and initiate a complaint. A number of those they can deal with now. Recently, the council also passed and the mayor signed a home business ordinance like that would identify what types of businesses can operate out of a residence. So anybody you think are illegally running a business out of their homes, and get them to, I guess that would be the revenue office. Mr. Lopez, Frank Lopez, his people. And let's see if we can find out.
It's something that needs to be publicized in print, in the Sun newspaper, or over the mountain, or whatever, to let everybody in Hoover know what this will be. Because I'm sure there's people who know other people who are running businesses out of their houses that's deteriorating and taking away from their real estate and their home, which they're proud of, just like I am about this thing next door to me.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Anyone else? Patterson, are you leaving or coming to visit?
Got to speak for a while. He went short bit.
We always speak.
My name is Jody Patterson, and I live at 404 Trace Court.
First time I met you, those glasses didn't come all the way down your nose.
Thank you. The mayor's presentation, I don't know what to say. Each of you know, and the mayor knows how I feel about more money and more taxes. I don't think that's the answer, and I'm specifically going to address that from the school situation. Got good things to say about you guys. I like the way you debate. I like the way you ask questions. You don't have a 3-minute, I'm going to be as brief as I can, but you don't have a 3-minute silly time limit like the school board does.
Start one right
Well, I'm going to be pretty close. I'm going to be real close. I'm going to get started. I've got some things that, reservations and concerns about the mayor's presentation, and I'm going to figure out how much it's going to cost my family. But rather than get critical of certain folks, I've had a lot of things that have run through my mind over the last, actually, couple of years. And some of the things, I don't have any other better way to just say, doesn't it just seem weird? And I'm going to give you about 10 things that have just been weird to me. That our school superintendent has been there for 3 years. In each of these 3 years, our schools have tested worse. Hoover High School dropped out of the top 10, and we're now number 26. You all know that. Doesn't it seem weird that we've got a number 1 football team and a number 126 school at Hoover High School? Seems weird to me. Doesn't it seem weird that Hoover High, they say they need more counselors, But the football team a couple of years ago, they didn't have any problem spending $100,000 getting on a jet, flying out to Dallas. And the worst part, getting beat coming home. Doesn't it seem weird? Our superintendent, they pat one another on the back. I've been to 37 of the last 41 meetings. It seems weird that our superintendent's patting everybody on the back. Telling everybody how much she loves Hoover, how much she enjoys working with the school board folks. Then all of a sudden, she's applied for another job. Doesn't it seem weird? Our superintendent signed a contract, almost $200,000. Set amount of money for a set time to perform. It seems weird to me that we just gave the school board, which is we, us, our tax money, just gave the superintendent $20,000 more. For what?
You understand?
I don't know. I know that, and I'm speaking strictly from the school folks, but this whole tax and the money funneling and the whole deal is directly related. Doesn't it seem weird? It seems weird to me that the principal of Hoover High School, every year that he's been there, the school test scores in college graduation preparedness, which is what U.S. News and World Report looked at, was going down every single year. Anyway, it seems weird to me that school administrators, Hoover School Foundation, school system in general, influencing elections and getting so involved. That was never the case in the 2000s. We can talk to school folks. They ran their show, the city ran theirs. And so I don't know what to think about that right now, but I've noticed that, and it's a concern. Doesn't it seem weird that all these discussions and everything with school folks and a few things with our city, money's going to cure these problems. Money's going to take it. More money's going to take care of it. Doesn't it seem weird? I'm going to tell you guys, most of you know I built homes for 22 years, so I understand very well the value of a school system versus the value of a home in Hoover. I understand it very well. And with me understanding like that, I don't want to give them 50 cents more of my hard-earned money. I don't know how this is developed, but whatever I've seen and witnessed out of 37 of these 41 school board meetings, I don't want to give them 50 cents more of my hard-earned money, period. I can tell each one of you, I've told a couple of you, tell everybody here tonight, if I thought for 1 minute that more money was the answer, I'd pony up, I'd donate. If I thought that that was the answer, don't believe it is. And I'm going on record tonight, and I'm going to tell you, our schools are in big trouble. More money's not the answer. School system, I've told you guys, you got to run the city, let them run the school system. They'll suck us dry if you let them. Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? Anything else from the council? We're adjourned.